Hello, welcome to RAM. I'm Masood Raja, and in this video I will briefly talk about how labor still is the source of profit. Now, keep in mind that this is on an abstract level and my examples are hypothetical. But in order to understand this important question of value produced by labor, we first need to understand that each business has two kinds of expenditures. One is fixed expenditure and the other is variable expenditure. A combination of the two runs a business. What are the fixed expenses? The fixed expenses of any business which are calculated before you launch a business are the cost of building, electricity, insurance, water, materials, raw materials that you will need to produce things from, right? All of that is the fixed expenditure and is part of a business plan, and those costs are always built into the commodities that you produce. You pass those on to the customer. The variable expense is always the cost of labor. Okay, keep this in mind. Fixed expenses and variable expenses. So let's take a hypothetical example. I'm not even going to use an industrial example. Let's take an example from the service industry. You work at a fast food restaurant. You get paid $10 an hour. Okay? And you sell one meal. As soon as you come on your shift, you have a 60-minute shift for which you get paid $10. And you come in and you sell one Happy Meal or whatever you want to call it for $10. Takes you about 2 minutes to prepare it and serve it, right? As soon as you take those $10 and spend 2 minutes in producing and delivering the food, you have paid for your 1 hour of labor. The rest of the 58 minutes that you will work cost your employer nothing in labor. That is pure profit. Why? Because whatever was the cost of the hamburger, the meat that went in it, the onions that went in it, the ketchup that went in it, is built into the price of that. No business, unless they have a subsidy or unless they are trying to dump their stuff, will ever purchase a thing at a higher value and sell it for less, right? That doesn't make business sense. So the cost of the materials has already been passed on to the customers, and the moment you get paid $10 is the cost of your labor, right? You paid it within the 2 minutes of your work. Rest of the 58 minutes, anything that you make and give to the customers is pure profit because the cost of labor is not in it. Does that make sense? Now, apply it on a larger scale. Why is it that the managers are always asking workers something to do to stay busy? Because they are trying to extract as much labor from your body as possible, right? Look at the grocery store checkout counters. How are they constructed? First of all, some of the grocery store clerks are timed so that they can scan the things properly. But if you look at that construction, there is nothing random about it. Industrial engineers constructed that space with only one thing in mind, right? And that is reduce the movement that the worker has to do. Why? So that the less the movement, the more labor you can extract from them, right? Why would they do that if the profit was not in labor, right? So when Marx or all the other Marxists, when they say that labor produces value, part of it is based in this understanding. Because the capitalist or those who have the money, they acquire raw materials, but those raw materials may have an exchange value, but they need to be transferred into commodities to have an exchange value. Labor converts that from raw materials to a commodity. Now, the price of the raw materials is always passed on to the customer. So the profit will always be how much can you extract from the labor in the process of transforming raw materials into a commodity. Now, if we understand this principle, then we can understand automation. Why do it's for efficiency, but it's also for reducing the cost of labor because that increases the margin. We can understand why a new CEO comes in and makes a company successful by doing what? By firing a lot of people, because the more they spend on labor, the less is the profit, which then teaches us that what labor produces actually creates value, right? And that's why the labor, the worker, is the most important part of that transformative process in which raw materials become commodities. That is why corporations go elsewhere in the world looking for cheap labor, right? And why do they need to? The problem is that now we have created a system, global in scope, that absolutely needs that cheap labor. Without cheap labor, the competition is so swift and so severe that they can't sustain it. So that's why these corporations go looking for cheap labor. That's why global economic policy is built so that the nation states have less and less to negotiate about what can they extract from global corporations, right? They offer their workers the lowest possible price. And the laws are weakened so that the labor is not protected. That is why post-1970s, the unions are constantly being broken, because what does a union do? It creates solidarity and gives workers a voice, right? It says, I'm not alone. There are 50 other people with me. You try to hurt me, we all 50 will stand together, right? So in United States, unions were busted in different ways, and now increasingly, right, race is inserted into it. That's why the conservatives always mobilize these racial stereotypes, right? So that if workers who share the same material conditions can still not come together because they are looking at it from a racial point of view, whose purpose does it serve? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're white or black. If you're working in a factory, right, you get paid the same amount, right? And that's how they break us and use our divisions to their own advantage, right? So once again, profit is in labor. How less can you pay them? How much work can you extract from them? How less of it can you use? It was there before automation. It is there even now. And if you want to explore further, look up a term called Taylorism. Right? I'll do a video on it, but Taylorism is all about managing a workspace in a way that you can extract more labor, more work from your workers. So these are some of my very simplistically rendered thoughts on production of value. I'm intentionally not using high theory words not because I think you won't understand it, but because I think there is no need for it. We can use common sense vocabularies to talk about these complex issues that impact our lives as manual workers as well as intellectual workers. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time with some more thoughts on such issues. If you have any suggestions, please post them in the comments. If you think that I've missed something, post it in the comments. Or if you would like to add something to what I just said, please post it in the comments. And join me and subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much. And as always, peace and love.